So my name's Ollie Bray, and I'm one of the strategic directors at Education Scotland, where I've got responsibility for curriculum, digital learning and teaching, and our professional leadership programmes. And it gives me great pleasure this afternoon to welcome two speakers. We've got Dr. Johanna from the University of Iceland, who will speak first, and then also Professor Lloyd from the University of the East of London, who will speak second. And just to quickly explain how this afternoon will work, not dissimilar to this morning, if you were in some of the sessions, is that the presentations will last for about 20 minutes. And we'll be encouraging you to submit questions like during this time. And then we'll have, about 8 to 10 minutes at the end where we will invite our speakers to answer the questions. And I'll do my best to collate the questions as we go forward. You can enter your questions in the live Q&A tab on the right-hand side of the room. So without further ado, what I would like to do now is I'd like to introduce Dr. Johanna, who is going to be speaking first from the University of Iceland. Dr. Johanna is a professor of early childhood education at the School of Education at the University of Iceland. She also holds an honorary doctorate from the University of Finland. Dr. Johanna has also received a Distinguished Alumni Award from the University of Illinois for a contribution to research in early childhood education. She's been conducting research in preschools and primary schools for what she describes as many, many years, and she's been involved in several international research projects as a researcher, a writer, and a consultant. And again, she's been really published quite widely by international colleagues. In fact, I'm quite confident there will be many people on this call this afternoon that are aware of her work. Her area of expertise are in educational transitions, children's perspectives, and action research. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Dr. Johanna for her opening remarks, and then we'll have a question and answer session at the end.
Good afternoon. I hope everyone can see my slides and everything's working. And in 2006, the OECD report, Starting Strong, identified two distinct approaches to early childhood education and care: the Ready for School approach and the social pedagogy approach. The Ready for School approach generally emphasized a more centralizing and academic strategy, while the social pedagogy tradition is more child-centered and holistic and has been identified as the Nordic model. Since then, Nordic early childhood programs have gained considerable attention. If you Google Nordic preschools, you can see headlines like "Why preschools in Sweden rocks and what we can learn from them," "Iceland is a children's paradise, children rule Iceland," "Kids Gone Wild, Denmark's forest kindergartens," "Norway shows the way in childcare," and "The joyful illiterate kindergartners of Finland." Do these headlines reflect myths or reality? My presentation will focus on the principles and values presented in early childhood policy documents in the Nordic countries and how these values are implemented in practice. The age for starting school in the Nordic countries has been higher than in many neighboring countries, but this might be a subject to change in several of the Nordic countries, and I will discuss the possible reasons and the challenges facing Nordic preschools. What we know as a reality is the idea of universal early childhood services is embedded in the Nordic educational policy. Children have the right to attend full early childhood programs during the years before starting schools, regardless of family income or parental in employment. Early childhood education is considered national responsibilities. The concept of institutionalized childhood has become part of the cultural belief system in the Nordic countries. Parents take it for granted that early childhood education institutions are needed for the appropriate education of young children. And virtually all children attend early childhood education programs from their early years, although there are some variations among the Nordic countries. We also know that Nordic early childhood education policies are not homogeneous. Each Nordic country has its political, geographic, and economic history that forms the basis for its national early childhood policies. If we take a look at the reasons and rationale behind early childhood education in the Nordic countries through the years, it becomes evident that it has changed considerably through the years. The rationale behind the first early childhood centers was to assist parents who, for various reasons, could not take care of their children. The second rationale was the rapid urbanization taking place, which demanded a more protected environment for children. The third rationale, calling for more space in early childhood education centers, was the increasing parental employment in the latter part of the 20th century. The expansions of early childhood programs favored mothers' labor market participation. So the focus at that point was on gender equality rather than on children's rights and interests. Finally, the fourth rationale for increasing early childhood programs, which became stronger as time passed, evolved around the children, their education, development, and social upbringing. So we have gone from regarding early childhood education institutions as social services for vulnerable groups to seeing them as the right of all children and families, which is consistent with the development in many other European countries. So in the beginning, early childhood centers were mainly social welfare institutions, emphasizing children's happiness, play, and social development through caregiving. Today, all the Nordic countries have a national curriculum guidelines for early childhood education, although they are labeled differently. These guidelines illustrate both philosophy and practice and reflect the values of the society. A few years ago, I was a part of a group of Nordic researchers who analyzed the curriculum guidelines in the Nordic countries in order to shed a light on the underlying values. We examined especially the values of democracy, care, and competency. I will now present the findings from that study and give examples from the curriculum framework. Democracy as a fundamental value is spelled out in the early childhood policy document in all the Nordic countries. Children are considered democratic beings with an emphasis not only on allowing children to experience democracy in their preschool settings, but also on educating children to become democratic citizens. So on the one hand, the focus is on teaching or developing democracy, where the emphasis is on the future. On the other hand, the focus is on lived democracy, where the here and now is emphasized. That is, what can be done in everyday life in preschool to promote democracy. And here are two examples. This is from Denmark. Preschool should give children co-determination, joint responsibility, and understanding and experience of democracy. And from the Norwegian one, by participating in the kindergarten community, the children shall be able to develop an understanding of society and the world in which they live. Another dimension of democracy concerns the relationship between the individual and the collective. Collective issues have to do with cooperation and equality between individuals, diversity and respect for others. And here's one example from Iceland. Democratic preschool practices are based on equality, diversity, shared responsibility, solidarity, and acceptance of different views. At preschool, children are to feel that they are part of a group and a community where justice and respect characterize relations. The individual aspect of democracy, on the other hand, has to do with individuals' right to have a choice, to participate, and to influence decisions. All the documents place children's rights in the prominent position. We can, for example, see this in the Finnish guidelines. Active and responsible participation and involvement create a foundation for the democratic and sustainable future. The right to be heard and involvement in issues affecting one's life are enshrined in the rights of the child. Early childhood education and care shall respect these principles central to the implementation of democracy. Providing children with care is articulated as an important function of preschool in all the Nordic countries. Here is an example from the Danish curriculum. In cooperation with parents, preschool should give children care and support their well-being, learning, development, and bildung in order to contribute to children's good and safe childhood. Care has more than one dimension in the curricula. Care is often connected to the fulfillment of basic needs, such as physical and emotional health, nutrition, movement, and rest. Care is also attributed as important for children's learning and development. And care is also addressed as an ethical and emotional relationship between the child and other people. It is the educator's responsibility to provide the children with care, and it is one of the rights of children to experience care. Children should learn and develop compassion for other people as well as experience that others show them compassion. Competence is one of the content areas in the Nordic curriculum guidelines appear quite similar. And instead of focusing on academic skills, the Nordic curricula bring to the forefront values related to children's evolving social competence and socio-emotional factors. Social competence is about interacting and cooperating with others. It's also about solidarity, empathy, being able to take the perspective of others. Social-emotional competence is about socio-emotional factors are related to individuals, such as development of self-image, self-esteem, and self-content. The Swedish curriculum guideline, for example, say the preschool should give children support to develop a positive picture of themselves as learning and creative individuals. Learning areas or content areas of the preschool are described in the curriculum text. And in addition to social competence and developing self-concept, all the curricula list these areas: language, literacy and communication, health, physical and emotional well-being, nature, environment and science, mathematical concepts, numbers, science, patterns, etc., culture and creativity and the arts. And emphasis is placed on holistic view of learning, integration of the learning areas, and meeting the interest of individual children. The curriculum guidelines do not only talk about the content, that is, what should be emphasized, but also how. That is children's learning processes. In that respect, the key word is play. Play has a central role in the Nordic early childhood philosophy and practice, and learning through play is emphasized in all the curriculum guidelines. The Norwegian guidelines say, for example, play shall be the key focus in kindergarten, and the inherent value of play shall be acknowledged. Kindergarten shall make good provision for play, friendship, and the children's own culture. Play shall be an arena for the children's development and learning, and for social and linguistic interaction. Kindergarten shall inspire and make room for different kinds of play, both outdoors and indoors. Children's learning through interactions with peers and the preschool staff is also described in the curricula. The Norwegian guidelines say, through interaction with each other, children form the foundation for learning and social competence. As you can see from this overview, the curriculum guidelines in the Nordic countries still reflect the Nordic model where play, social relationship, democracy, solidarity, play, care, and holistic education are emphasized. However, there are some indications that this might be changing. The Nordic early childhood education is facing challenges that might influence and become a threat to the Nordic model. First, take a look at the starting school age and the changes there. This table shows the 5 Nordic countries and the starting school age, and the preparation classes that most of the countries used to have. The overall goal of the preparatory classes was to create continuity in children's education and successful transition from preschool to primary school. So in Finland, children start school when they are 7. They have a play-based preparatory class for the 6-year-olds. that can be located either in the preschool or in the primary school. In Denmark, children start primary school when they are 7. They have preparation class for the 6-year-old that is located in the primary school. The educators are preschool teachers, and the preschool pedagogy has influenced the preparation class. Today, however, pedagogues in the preparation classes are reporting a dilemma between the play-based pedagogy of the preschool and the pressure to teach more academics. In Sweden, children start primary school when they are 7, but the 6-year-olds go to preschool class that's located in the primary school. This can be subject to change. Politicians are now proposing that preschool classes will be abolished and made into the first year of school with more teaching, a clear content and knowledge goals. In Norway, the 6-year-olds were moved from the preparatory classes to school in 1997, and the preparatory classes were abolished. Preschool teachers were very much against this change, but this was a political decision. However, what the Norwegians did was to emphasize and create a first-grade curriculum that should offer the best from preschool and primary school traditions. That is, mix the two traditions. And preschool teachers were allowed to teach from 1st to 4th grade, providing they took a further year of teacher education. So what happened in the beginning in Norway was that preschool tradition invaded the primary school. But this gradually changed, and the reasons were both political and institutional. An educational reform emphasizing reading and writing were established, and the preschool tradition in the primary school was giving up, and first grade became more schoolish. Several Norwegian authors have studied these changes, and they have also pointed out that institutions have their own traditions that are strong and resistant to change. And when the preschool teachers started working in the primary school, they changed role and became even more school-like than the primary school teachers themselves. And in Iceland, the preparatory classes was moved to primary school in 1991 with the same results. So, this is the system that we used to have in the Nordic countries. A play-based preschool for children from 1 to 5. We have a preparatory class for the 6-year-olds based on the play-based pedagogy of the preschool, and the primary school starting at 7. This has gradually changed, and now this is the picture. We still have preschool for children up to 6-year-olds, and the preschools are facing outside pressure and challenges. Then we have the 6-year-olds, either in the primary school or in preparation classes that are becoming more school-like. So the Nordic countries are facing several challenges, and the push down of formalized pedagogical approaches is the main one. This change has swept over early childhood setting in the Western world, and there are already signs of it in the Nordic countries, and the lowering of school age is one example of that. In Iceland, some municipalities which oversee and operate the preschools have considered shifting away from play and holistic child-centered practices towards more structured, formalized teaching. And in some instances, there have been policy proposals which suggest dividing the preschool into academics taught by preschool teachers and play and social issues overseen by less educated persons. Another threat related to the former are the forces advocating for accountability, evidence-based teaching methods, and standardized assessment to determine if children have met particular learning objectives, which have become more prominent in the Western world. And as many of you know, the OECD cross-national assessment of early learning outcomes tests the skills and competencies of 5-year-old children. So we face the question, will increasing standardized assessment put the Nordic early childhood education system under siege? Because the Nordic model emphasis on play, social relations, democracy, care, and the cultivation of solidarity are difficult to measure systematically. So the question is there a real danger that we will start to teach what's measured instead of what we value? Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, Dr. Johanna. I'm sure that everybody took a lot from that presentation. Just one or two reflections from me, if that's okay. I thought it was great that you started off with those headlines, right at the start, and then I also thought it was great. I probably should explain. I thought it was great because I've done bits of work in all the Nordic countries and visited there personally as well, including Iceland, and I lived in Denmark for 3 years, so I know that part of the system very, very well. But I also thought it was great that you went on to explain, I guess, a headline myth that we sometimes get in the UK, and that is that the Nordic countries have no structure, or no curriculum, or no conceptual framework in the early years. And then I thought it was great that you picked up on some of those kind of core characteristics across the Nordics, both in terms of democracy, care. I won't mention them all, but the importance of social and emotional learning, and those parts there. And then I thought, it was also great to get that great word in there that some people on the call might not be familiar with, bildung, which I always kind of associate with the ability of lifelong learning and children living and growing over that kind of period of time from the early years. And then it was nice at the end as well to hear, I suppose, some of those challenges that are being faced by not just Nordic countries, but I suppose all countries at the moment. And you talked in particular around, I guess, formalized pedagogical processes and how we interpret those, but also the challenges that we can sometimes get from standardized assessment and accountability frameworks, sometimes that have got these unintended consequences. I'm just going to sort of check the questions now. We've got a couple of questions that have come in, and we've probably got time for just one or two of them. There's a really good question I'd like to start off with, which is about parents, and I just wonder if you could maybe reflect on, as part of the Nordic model, or perhaps just one of the examples, how does the Nordic model support parents to support their children? So how does the Nordic model support parents to support their children? Any observations or insight around that?
Yeah, I maybe this is too close to me, but parents are there's the curriculum guidelines. If we just look at them, it's in all the guidelines, the cooperation between the home or parents and the preschool is emphasized very much in all all the curriculum guidelines. I couldn't mention it in a short presentation, but it's a very prominent part of the curriculum guidelines. Yeah.
I think that's great, and thanks for reflecting. I mean, my own reflection when I was living in Denmark, but also the workplace was very supportive of the education system as well. A lot of flexibility for parents to be able to leave work early and to pick up their children, to drop off children, and to work with that. And I think that's something that's quite common across the Nordics. And maybe just one more question, and this is a common theme that's come in from one or two people, and it's really around the earlier start age, which you hinted at in your presentation is becoming, a challenge, in many countries, children starting formal schooling earlier, and the questions that have come through for a couple of people is really around evidence, and I guess the question, if I was to summarize, would be: is there any evidence to suggest that by starting children earlier at school around that it does lead to increased outcomes, when they enter into adult life? Or is that just a perception that we have, or some people have?
I haven't seen any evidence of that, and one of my good colleagues from Finland, we were presenting at a conference in Australia once, and the Australians were very interested in why Finland was doing so well in the PISA, and they asked her, what are you doing? Why are you doing so well? And her reply was, we don't teach them how to read and write until they are 7. That's the reason. We emphasize play, learning through play and social relationship, and they don't start until 7 in school. So I haven't seen evidence of that children are doing better.
Great, thank you. Thanks so much for your remarks. Okay, I think what we're going to do is don't quite know how we do this in a virtual forum, but I'm going to give you a clap around that for your presentation, because I thoroughly enjoyed what you had to say, and your insight there. And